Why? It comes to mind the ongoing sustained campaign of subtle belligerence. So yes, it came to me because largely this is a lot of what goes on, right? It's like how the economic history of everywhere that's not the West has gone down. It is, in cases of domestic violence, it's always the case that there's been a long period of hostility, subtle hostility going on. And so it just puts it way up at that level, and it's like I was saying, it's like the anxiety, it puts it at quite a oh shit yeah you're living in a stress bubble without even knowing it, and it's the old thing about how the frog gets boiled alive and it doesn't know, because it's only very gradual, and so this campaign of subtle belligerence, and this is religion, the subtle belligerence, because this is a pretty heavy threat, to be tortured for all eternity in a place, an inescapable place that everything's on fire, and yeah, so that's a bit of a threat. That's like, and I'm just going to make a bold statement right now, right? All these pictures of demons, these are actually stylistic representations of religion, actually. Because religion wears the emperor's new clothes, and this is how this being is depicted. The thing with it is, I think the demon thing, the horns, and this came from people. They wanted to overthrow and have the moral authority, okay, which is replicating the aspirations of anxiety, right? And so we're the Caucasian people, we had a very detailed perception of reality, and one of the first and foremost things of that was respecting nature, actually, and acknowledging nature. And so that was taken from us, because that's when they started sticking horns on people. They're calling them the bad guy. And so and this was just seemingly normal practice, man. It seemed reasonable. That's the thing, it seemed reasonable. And the genesis of that, the political status of what I've just said, actually, it actually comes from the fact that consciousness acknowledges anxiety. And so yeah. And here we have this way of things. Where the money thing, it's just, it's gotta. And this, the compulsion to get more wealth. So that's what I'm talking about. What is the political mechanism that gives that its value? Where does that value come from? Is it just an instinctive thing? I think it's in keeping with the nature of consciousness, actually, because anxiety is about the compulsion to prevail over people and control, right? And so it follows that same pattern. And we can see there in history, let's take this great pack of lies the Second World War is about. Why would everyone, how has it played out that everyone believes that Hitler was Stalin? Because that's actually effectively what everyone believes. So it wasn't Hitler. They say he killed 6 million people, but actually he didn't. These records. The Red Cross were one of the first people in the prison camp places, and they only could document 250,000 people died in the prison camps. Now, the way the bloody story's been told, it's like the only people in these camps were Jewish people. Well, that's just not true. It's also a case that, Hitler had a whole battalion of Jewish people in his army. One of his best friends was Jewish, man. And on the other side, on the Stalin side, Stalin starved 7 million Ukrainians to death in the Holodomor, 1932, 1933. And now we understand why this is. It's because in the previous 20, 30 years, there was a kind of an industrial revolution it was the beginning of the mechanisation of farming. And so when the good farm folk of Russia, what at that point included the Ukraine, they were getting rich, man. They had record crops all the time, and they were exporting it, boom, all over the show. And so they were getting to be very wealthy, because really the key to Stalin's political rise was actually the newspapers. And so with the wealth of the farmers, they could actually challenge his political power just by being involved. They could be here, be there. They could resource people to represent themselves, and so that's why Stalin turned around and killed them all. First, it was take all their food, all their productivity, because the government needed it, he said. And that wasn't enough, so then he went and got all their farm machinery, because it had to be melted down and made into trains and whatnot. So the fact is, it's a giant pack of lies, the old World War Two. And I've not done this yet, but I think I'll go out to I'll meet a military chap at some point. I'm going to put that question to them. Exactly why is it that everyone believes that Hitler was Stalin? Because the thing is why I raise this point. Hitler was made the bad guy because he wanted to kick out the financial system, which is predatory, right? See the thing with what he was thinking is the money that the government have is actually the people's. The people have made that money. You know, the people have generated that wealth through physical activity, right? So it's owned by the people. But the financial system thinks that it owns it. And herein lies this careful deployment of this political theatre. And so, yeah. And so they had to make him the bad guy. Yeah. You should, you can research it, but Hitler offered a number of peace treaties with London, with England to Churchill before the Second World War started, because he thought that English people and Germans were kind of the same thing, right? And so for me, this brings to my mind the question there. I feel it would be quite equitable to everyone if all of the Caucasian people in the world became one people, right? And so, so there you go. It's like if all the Caucasian people in the world were one people. I've mentioned that to a Chinese or two, and they think it's a bloody good idea. And because it's the thing is, this is the thing of the political thing. See, making the world dominated by a political system. This is why they can't figure anxiety out, right? Because it's only because of anxieties do we have politics. Because people who believe in consciousness and courage, we get to talking and we immediately gravitate to a solution. And this is this business of the expression of consciousness. You know, this is this most highly valued spiritual thing, the expression of consciousness. And so we get together and we honour consciousness. And this is why we talk and everything is, we're in a nurturing context, right? Nurturing context, right? And so, but politics doesn't do that, does it? It just likes to shout about problems. And that gives the problems the political power. And so this is really, it's just because of this thing that people believe that anxiety is wisdom and virtuous. People believe that anxiety is wisdom, and they're the people that are listening. The people that are doing the talking are selling it that anxiety is virtuous. So you better go along with what they're saying, type shit. And so this is the thing of it, the business of which came first, the chicken or the egg, right? Well, the chicken came with an egg in it. It's the thing of that. The fact is, it's that this is all. See, this is this main sneaky trickery that's been going on, man. Our language is one-dimensional, and consciousness is multiple dimensional. So I can consider several things at the same time and be sensitive to multiple contingencies in each of these things. So you're getting out there, you've got like, say, several things or 10 things or something, things you want to consider. And those things have attached to them, there might be, 4, 5, 6 each. So you've got like 40 things on your mind all at the same time, and you don't realise you do that, but everyone does that. This balance of consideration, And the thing with it is consciousness can function so fast. It's way, you know what? How real is what I'm telling everyone? We are blind to the awesome potential of the mind and the brain. Even though it's the only thing we've ever known, we're 100% familiar with how amazing the brain is, and in so many different ways, particularly that magical moment, and everyone has known it. Usually the first one is the big one. It's where you meet it's the young, the young guy there meets the girl, it might be on a family holiday or, they have that thing and they get together, and then there's all this decision gets made that they both are in on the decision, and they both make the decision. And there's all this body language going on to where you're hooking up, right? You become an item, and it could be for the one night, and so a lot of that organisation of that happening to where your mind gets blown and you're in love, and mostly all of that happens without language. And this goes on and on. And then there's the same thing where how music changes how you feel. And that's the same thing. There's no words involved in that. But you're reacting to it, and it's doing its thing, man. It's musicking it up, man. And so that event, that going on, this is just material to support the contention that consciousness operates at a way more sophisticated level than our language can do, right? Our language is complete rubbish at communicating consciousness, actually. It's just absolute rubbish. And so, here we have the point that language has been developed from the very start within the jurisdiction of the 8 laws of anxiety. And so as it has been intangible, so it has been present at all stages of the development of language and the decision of the use of language. It has to, this presence of anxiety has been really fully, in control of the development of the use of language, right? As a matter of course, because it has control of it, it governs it, right? Which was the mighty revelation to me, which I now respectfully pass to you. So there you are, that's the thing of it. That's what I got going on. See New Zealand, right? New Zealand is way down here. Hi, New Zealand. It's the thing of it is, right? It's actually see there's I've got the US there, it's got the most now. It's got nearly 250,000 cases. And only 10,000 recovered. It's got 6,000 deaths and 10,000 recovered, which actually is that's a 60%. That's a 60% win rate for the virus. Anyway. See, this business of God, religion talks about God. Why would he do this? See, the fact it is, from observation, and good science is good observation, it's a political decision. If this, let's put it, in terms, religion's credible and we respect religious people and all that kind of thing. We could say, Mr. Christian, why is God letting this happen? And he would waffle on about God works in mysterious ways and there's a plan for everyone. All those things that they would say, you go out and test this, right? Go ask a Christian, why is God letting this happen? And he'll say all sorts of things to you because actually he doesn't know. He doesn't know God. Religion is actually it's a replication of the function of anxiety, actually. It's just been, they've spent hundreds of years composing it and polishing it, right? See, the reason this pandemic's happening, I think the main reason this is happening, right? The main reason it is happening, and it could be something that can be talked about the Spanish flu, which actually came from America. So I'm thinking I can't escape this idea that the reason of the conditions that would be necessary for the disease to invent itself, for it to be used in human society as a petri dish, and it gets organised in a way where this virus happens, right? or it gets some biological thing and gives it superpowers to kill people. Otherwise, it's just this innocuous little bacterial thing that we've got plenty of immunity against. It's like so many things. If you change one little component of a machine, you're going to have to redesign the whole machine to suit that, because it's really a unified equation. Machines are a unified equation where everything works in harmony with itself, right? And so yeah, the human situation has facilitated this pandemic. And I think if there's one thing you can moan about, if you want to blame something that started it, right, it's financial pressure. People living according to the financial pressure that they're involved in. And see, that's another thing. You talk about financial pressure, but actually it's not a case of there being an elephant in the living room. It's actually that we are living inside the elephant. That's the experience with the financial system. And so, and we're inside the elephant. We can't touch the outside of it. We can't touch the sides or the ceiling. And this is why it kind of goes unchallenged, right? And so I would say that's the reasonable conclusion I come to, is the conditions that existed, that this disease materialised on the earth for the people, was mainly caused by the conditions that the financial system was setting, the financial pressure. I mean, everyone knows that everyone gets screwed as much as possible by the money thing, i.e., the employer will always argue for lower wages. The bank will always argue for higher interest. Everyone's self-serving, Everyone's self-serving. And, I mean, you talk about the fascists. They called Hitler the fascist. Well, actually, he was not a fucking fascist at all. The financial system was the fascist, and that's actually not being fair to say that. Actually, just hang on a minute. Hang on. It only seems like that because of the presence of the belief that anxiety is virtuous. And that's why every moment, every communication, every thought, all is politically biased with that. Boosh, 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 boosh. And so then you get the big moments, man. You get the fucking, the stereotypical political climate and the cultural climate within a corporate environment. It is dripping with this problem. It is absolutely soaked with this culture, because it's like, you know what? It's anxiety that makes politics a sport, right? Anxiety makes politics into a sport. And there you get your political thing. People have competitions. They are hardcore committed to this competitive game called the political correctness of anxiety. Who can be most politically correct according to the anxiety? And here we have it, the political correctness of anxiety. And this is the boiled down mathematical reality, man, of the situation. It's the political correctness of anxiety. And this is this format where so many people in a big group, booyah, man, They all can operate under the same understanding without ever talking, because it's the instinctively intuited political correctness of anxiety that is actually, that's the format, right? That is the political ideology. And so you can think of the financial system being a giant bully on the world and lying to everyone and robbing them about how productive they are, right? And they make sure we understand this because, oh no, New Zealand's got a housing crisis. No, New Zealand's got a skill shortage. And, oh no, it's like, oh, we haven't got any bad news. Oh, we'll get some bad news from America and we'll give them that. And it's like, we've just got to keep making sure they understand that they're actually a bit broken and, you know, they need help. And if it wasn't for the media, they'd be lost. And it's like, you know, all of that is about the political correctness of anxiety. And so going back to my first point, the ongoing sustained campaign of subtle belligerence. Okay, so you get the event of the political correctness of anxiety. Okay, that's like saying, oh, this is the car, right? And then you get the ongoing sustained campaign of subtle belligerence that is driving the car. Political correctness of anxiety is the car. Campaign of subtle belligerence is the car. That's the function of the car. So it's one is what it is, the other is what it does. So as far as the chicken and the egg thing, they actually both came along at the same time. And, you know, consciousness doesn't concern itself with such things because consciousness is willing to forgive. Consciousness. The reason consciousness is an urban myth is because people believe that anxiety is wisdom. You know, for a good 5 years, the media was slamming the teachers in New Zealand that there weren't enough good outcomes in education because they made out this small little group of kids that hadn't performed very well, didn't learn very well, weren't, you know, they implied that this was the whole education system, this was all of the schools, and they're always on about the old schools, right, the kids, right, and saying there's something wrong with the teachers, it's the teachers' fault. But actually, no, it's not the teacher's fault. It's just that the kids value something more than education. And they're just not interested in education when they think that anxiety is wisdom. Because as we know, that the old anxiety there, it's not the slightest bit interested in education. It's got no interest in it. It doesn't even acknowledge education. It just wants that direct conflict with the people, the mind. It wants chaos. It wants to destroy relationships. It's very focused. I mean, it's not very focused. A reality of that practice is the destruction of relationships and putting relationships under extreme pressure. And it gets in there, and it does what, like I've said, you know, it's like today's realization actually. This campaign of subtle belligerence. And so that's all rife in relationships, domestic violence relationships. And then it goes up to, you know, the corporate thing and, thinking, that it's always promoted that the economy is really important, that's actually subtle belligerence as well. Because most of us know that it's not true. We go to work and we work, and that creates new wealth every day. And mostly all of the country is working, right? Okay, so why do we need to worry about growth when every single day we've made a whole lot of growth? But no, as in the case of the health system in Britain, oh, it's going bankrupt. Oh no, we might have to privatise it. Oh shit, and that's just taking the piss. It's this perception they've sold the people this belief that they're in trouble. They've sold the people the health system is failing. They pulled it in New Zealand, right? This government got in, and the first thing they did is they decided to spend $1 billion, okay, on security in the Pacific area to protect the Pacific countries from Chinese influence. When actually on paper and in reality, China's actually one of New Zealand's best friends. We're big trade partners and we don't have a hang up about each other at all. It's quite nice actually. Yeah. Yeah, so they gave $1 billion for that, which was hugely insulting. And, I actually contacted a few people about that. Because that was outright disgusting, because it put the fucking anxiety stamp on it fully. Under this belief that anxiety is wisdom, according to the political correctness of anxiety, there is no such thing as a relationship. There is an opportunity for competition to try and prove yourselves to the political correctness of anxiety. It's a situation that provides the competitive environment where you can compete to see who can be the most loyal to anxiety. See who can replicate the best anxieties. That's how significant this is, right? And this is what kids see. Kids grow up. Young Karen, notable camp mother of the Sun and Moon Family United. She said she had something to do with basically volunteering her consciousness to local young people. And I'm doing that. There's a story there. As you get to the middle age thing, you're very naturally disposed to actually to be charitable on that to young people. That's something that just comes with once you grow up. This is just a natural thing that happens, and so anyway, yeah, I've made a bloody great. I added 2 and 2 together, and I think I might as well just do live shows on YouTube instead of messing about, mate. Nah, I don't know. So I'm going to make a vid tomorrow. I know I like promising these vids, Now, there's a vid to be had about consciousness, the expression of consciousness and how people value it above everything, man. And my car is a very good example of that. It draws people's attention, actually, because it's really nice, right? And you can hardly tell what